ongoing support. It enables teachers and students to make decisions and choices that foster problem-solving strategies and confidence to explore new strategies while moving towards the future. This presentation turns focus to quality leadership as the most impactful resource teachers might have in their endeavour to fulfil expectations of education quality. Sustainable teaching and learning strategies, development and self-improvement. Teachers' teaching decisions and leadership's management decisions should reach beyond the classroom walls to influence the future of our next generation. When we talk about impactful teaching and a teacher's toolkit for success, our first step should be to demonstrate a context consciousness. This concept is extensively discussed in my most recent book about policies and the book I wrote in 2020 about professional development. In this slide, I provided you with the references I used for this presentation, and you can come back to this in your own time. In our audience today, we have Bachelors of Education students, we have experienced students, we have academic colleagues, we have colleagues from EduForum, we have leaders, maybe current leaders, maybe future leaders. My focus throughout this presentation will go beyond technology, digital resources and software resources. It will turn focus to teachers and their leaders as our most valuable tool and resource to improve quality education. Hattie, 2009. My focus is especially on leaders and the power leaders have to bring change to our classrooms and to impact our teaching quality. Leadership can have a significant impact on quality education and as such on impactful teaching. If we claim that the starting point of impactful teaching is leadership, what exactly do we mean? I developed a Canis leadership model where I focus on connectedness, awareness, need analysis, negotiation, constant, ongoing negotiation, action and support. Lingard, Mills et al. 2003 emphasized the importance of productive classroom pedagogies. How can school leaders support the improvement of productive school classroom pedagogies in your context? I invite you during this presentation to reflect on your context, either higher education context, classroom context, or your school context. For students, academics, full-time teachers and leaders, how can we optimally use our opportunities to teach and to learn? Quality education is only possible through quality teaching, quality teachers, quality leaders, positive teaching and learning environments, and quality support. Our goals and purpose within the education space need to embrace our industry partners. We work towards a strong link between theory and practice. Our universities often focus on theories, but how do we develop the golden thread between theory and practice without a close engagement with our industrial partners? We need to stay connected. We need to reflect on how we can ensure that our student teachers are classroom ready with a context consciousness. We need to rethink how we provide positive learning experiences for our teacher students, skill improvement for teachers, school students and parents. Do we focus on school-specific frameworks and strategies, micro-education policies? Will our future teachers be able to deliver quality teaching if they only have the shade of a tree as their classroom? We need to go back to basics. Do we focus on stimulating a love for learning? This is the power of education for our nation. This is part of it should be part of higher education institutes' strategic objectives. Do we see a love for learning as an objective in our strategic planning? Quality support. Do we ask questions about what do we see as quality support, targeted support for our teacher educators and pre-service teachers? We need an ongoing critical reflection on curricula. We are preparing the next generation of teachers and teacher students. They will prepare a next generation for jobs and workplaces that we currently can't even imagine that will exist or know what would it look like. How do we do this? How do we prepare our student teachers for this next generation education? Constant reflection and discussions regarding curriculum design, development, and delivery with our industry partners might be the answer. The strength of an education system is embedded in relationships, partnerships with industry, the depths of reflection and discussions. What is understood to be impactful teaching in various contexts? Do we understand the needs of our students and teachers in our care and in our classroom? Turning focus to the quality initial teacher education now, and internationalization in higher education courses, in programs, in learning mobility. We are waiting for whenever international travel might be allowed again, but should we not turn our attention to online internationalization partnerships It is not the same, I know, as face-to-face experiences and in-country experiences, but it provides opportunities for students who might not previously had opportunities or financial resources to travel. According to Harris and Sass, 2011, the largest impact on quality teaching happens within the first few years. However, I argue that ongoing improvement of quality teaching takes place beyond the first 5 years of a teacher's career. It's an ongoing process that starts during initial teacher education, but it never ends. Holland's 2011 emphasized a holistic, practice-based approach to improve quality teaching. Firstly, the focus is on essential knowledge, skills, habits of minds, and what we see and understood as quality to be. The emphasis is understanding the learning process as influenced by culture and by context. We talk about soft skills. We talk about teaching philosophies. We talk about teaching beliefs. Do we talk to our pre-service teacher or student teachers about their teaching philosophies? Hollins mentions, secondly, the design of opportunities for learning with an emphasis on epistemic practices, strongly linked to student evidence and data. Do we know our students? Do we know what their learning needs are? And how do we plan for these learning needs? Let's look at the challenges for a quality education. Darling Hammett, 2017, stated that high turnover rates and attrition rates of educators or teachers reduce the achievements of students. In addition to aggravating teacher shortages, high attrition and turnover rates create extra costs for schools and education departments. She mentioned $2,000 or more for every teacher that we lose who leaves the teaching profession. High turnover not only influences students' achievement, but greatly impacts teacher workforce stability in schools and the skill improvement training strategies or professional development of our teachers. Once they start in or get caught in a cycle of a turnover from one school to another school to another school, their skill improvement training and professional development will suffer. Do our school leaders have a retention strategy in place as part of the toolkit towards impactful teaching? Leading effectiveness, quality, and stability means a focus on support and professional learning. Do we create opportunities for our student teachers, our experienced teachers, to observe colleagues? Do we encourage stakeholder empowerment? Do we encourage professional learning and support with an employee-centered lens? Professional learning as a social enterprise? Do we investigate and examine policies for leadership expectations and well-being frameworks? We are after sustainable, impactful teaching. We do not need quick fix or one-size-fits-all solutions. Every context has its own needs. We need a context-conscious approach to rich, impactful teaching. There are various, Darling Hammett, 2017, mentioned in her research project that there are various dissatisfaction within the teaching workforce. 55% of teachers in her research project mentioned that they want to leave the teaching profession. 66% mentioned that they constantly consider changing schools. The reason given for this dissatisfied disposition is 25% of teachers mentioned accountability pressures. Again, the link between leadership and teachers. 21% mentioned a lack of administrative support. Again, leadership and employee disconnect. 21% mentioned overall general dissatisfaction with the teaching career that they chose. Again, leadership, the most important tool in our teachers' toolkit. When we engage with our teachers and talk to them, we might be able to proactively address dissatisfied teachers. Let's come back to the toolbox. What is needed in an effective teacher's toolbox to experience success under an overall umbrella of support? We need engaged leaders. We need a two-way process of relationship building, trust relationships. Our leaders are responsible for developing a culture in schools. We need a professional culture in our schools, a healthy classroom and learning culture. We need to look out for the well-being of our teachers and students. We need to analyze curricular content knowledge, in-depth understanding of an assessment cycle. Do we really understand the importance of student data and student evidence in our decision-making around planning, around teaching, around assessment? Do our pre-service teachers, our B.Ed students, do they understand the impact of student evidence and data on their teaching strategies? Student performance measures. Implications for quality education. Focus always turns back to leadership. One of the most influential tools in our teachers' toolbox. The Canis leadership model, as I mentioned previously, is all about connectedness, awareness, need analysis, negotiation. We need to make ourselves vulnerable to talk about the issues and the challenges in our education environment. We need to take action and we need to offer ongoing support. As leaders, we have to allow space for our teachers' uniqueness. We need to respect human value. We need to model what we want from our employees and from our B.Ed students, from our beginning teachers and from our experienced teachers. We need to know our students and we need to know our teachers. And that's the Canis model. Quality education, we have to talk about teacher capacity and teacher knowledge. Let's take a closer look at quality education and teacher capacity and knowledge. In our audience today, we have members of our next generation of teachers. You are the VIPs in this presentation. You are the important people. You are our future. You will affect the future of each of the students in your classroom. Henry Adams once said, teachers affect eternity. No one can tell where their influence stops. My advice to you as future teachers and those beginning teachers in the audience, notice your students' evidence. Notice the data that is available when you observe your students. Use the evidence and data. Turn it into information. Once it becomes information, you can use it as applied knowledge to refine your planning, to refine your teaching, and to refine your strategies and the link between your theory and your practice. Knowledge, cognitive engagement, core subject content knowledge. Never stop to read scholarly work. Add value, create inclusive learning teaching environments, improve equality, tolerance, and understanding. Model professional behavior. Show a willingness to explore various teaching practices and strategies and approaches. Take risks with your teaching. As a leader, I was a leader in a school for 8 years. When I walked around the premises and I heard screaming and shouting, it was the first indication that there are problems or there were problems in certain classrooms. The moment when a teacher starts to scream or shout to gain order in a classroom, you lost ownership of your classroom and your teaching and learning space. So as leaders, the leaders in the room, I hope that you will support your teachers to move away from screaming and shouting, but that because it's not a healthy environment. And that takes us to the next slide. I hope the slide on your screen is microeducation policies. Is that right? Can you give me an indication if that's the slide that you can see?
Yes, microeducation policies.
Okay, thank you. So when we talk about safe and healthy learning environments, we need to embrace microeducation policies. And I know in our audience today, we have leaders or people in leadership positions. We have people in decision-making roles. And I know there are people in the audience who will be in leadership positions in the near future, ready to lead the future. What is the teaching and learning culture that you would like to see in your teaching and learning environment? We need to reflect on where we are going, what we want, and how will we get there. Impactful teaching happens in safe learning and teaching environments. What do we understand as safe learning environments? Our microeducation policies in schools and in our teaching and learning environments should construct a safe teaching and learning environment. It should aim for stability. It should aim to manage turnover and attrition and dropout tendencies among our teachers and among our students. It should demonstrate flexibility. It should develop an emotionally and physically safe environment where we can have impactful teaching. It should demonstrate a duty of care where we address the needs and we focus on improvement. When we talk about safe environments, we need to talk about workplace and workspaces. Impactful teaching, quality teachers do not happen in silos. It takes place in a shared workplace, in a shared workspace. Taylor, 2016, discussed how Bronfenbrenner's ecological system theory embraces contextual factors at different levels. It emphasizes human development through complex interaction levels. It emphasizes awareness of individual needs, but also community needs. And how do we bring this together to get the best development in impactful teaching? We do not have time today to discuss this in detail, but I invite you to have a read of about the Bronfenbrenner's ecological system theory. A new lens. Ravens and French developed a framework that reflects some levels of power. The focus is on how power, management, and leadership as tools within an organization might change minds. It's a very old theory, but we still observe this in our organizations. When we talk about handy tools and impactful teaching, I strongly encourage you to reflect on who you are as a student teacher, as an experienced teacher, as a future leader, as a current leader, as an industrial partner in education. Use a lens or this lens to critically reflect on your impact on education. You might be a valuable part of another colleague's toolkit. And as we discussed in the beginning of this presentation, I'm a constructivist, and my philosophy is informed by my lived experiences. My theory towards leadership and quality improvement is a 5-minute-a-day theory. You have to improve, you have to engage. And if you observe members in your workplace who face challenges and difficulties and issues, you have to get away from your office, get away from your desk, and start with 5 minutes a day interaction. How are you? Are you okay? How can we help you? What are your difficulties? What are the issues that you currently try to manage? 5 minutes a day will improve teaching in your school and in your classroom. Context consciousness, a concept that I feel very strong about. We can't improve teaching, we can't improve education if we aren't aware of what's going on in our context. Classroom size, teacher expertise, teacher quality, qualifications, diversity, inclusive classroom needs, equality, equity, resources, what's available, how can I use the resources? Are the resources targeted for a specific context? Partnerships, stakeholders, trust relationships between partnerships and partners, industrial partners and stakeholders. We need to rethink our school leaders' place in the toolkit of our teachers. I invite you on a journey through the out-of-field phenomenon. We are going to reflect on a global phenomenon, a global scenario that has major implications for quality and impactful teaching. At the end of this journey, the question is, how will you, as an industrial partner, as a teacher, as a leader, as a student educator, how will you make a change? How will you make a difference? The scenario, the out-of-field teaching phenomenon, teachers who get assigned to positions or subjects for which they do not have suitable qualifications or expertise. The first journey is a primary school female teacher in an out-of-field position. Her feedback or her response on the out-of-field phenomenon, we are out of field, actually. We are out of self-confidence, out of everything. My classroom management is wavering. I prepare different assessments. It becomes impossible. So what do we learn from this teacher? A confidence problem, a workload problem, and a classroom management problem. How will we fix this problem to get impactful teaching? The next response in this journey, a gifted year 11 student in an out-of-field teacher's classroom. The parents provide us with support, with feedback. My daughter's experience was that she is sucked at English, a little slang. I was rather surprised. I've changed schools. I notice now she's getting very high marks in English. The only thing I can put that down to was the way that she was being taught and what she was being taught. The question, when we go back to leadership and impactful teaching, is how can a leader assign an out-of-field teacher in a year 11 classroom and expect high quality or impactful teaching? Again, we need to reflect on what are we doing, or how do we lead and manage our workforce? Next one, in this journey, focus on building parent and partnerships with students. Again, a gifted student in a primary school, in an out-of-field teacher's classroom. He doesn't want to go to school. He's going to get left behind. The mom mentioned it's a big shock for her, this whole experience of out-of-field teaching. We have arrangements for another school. I'm not going to struggle every day to get him to school. Again, a leadership problem or an issue. The next journey, a student with special learning needs, certified as an ADHD student. A mother mentioned it went worse and worse and worse. By week 9, there were talks about suspension. I didn't know where it would go from here. I felt bad. I sometimes felt physically sick. His self-esteem was linked to that. Him being miserable. I struggled with his attitude, his anger, intensified problems with his sister. He took it out on her and on me and my husband. So the classroom problem became a home problem and a well-being problem for the student and for the parents. Concluding remarks. Quality toolkit for impactful teaching. Leaders, teachers, and micro policies. How can we ensure that teachers have the most appropriate tools in their toolkit? It's a question that I leave with you for further reflection. What do we want? Where are we heading? Conceptualizing quality teaching and quality teachers, focusing on culture development. We are after confident teachers, knowledgeable other. We are after enthusiastic teachers who are engaged in their class and engaged with these students. Responsive teachers. We want them to have a presence in the classroom. We want them to be empathetic. I conclude, our leaders are the most important part of our teachers' toolkit. Their approaches, decisions, actions became the micro-education policies of their environment, the culture of schools, and the climate of teaching and the learning environment. The expectation is that we will have quality teachers in our classrooms, but we need to have quality, engaged leaders in our wider school community. And I thank you for your attention and for the opportunity to talk to you. And I am happy to take questions or to discuss any further comments.
Thank you, Professor Du Plessis. We actually have some questions from the audience. We have a question from Aditya. She wants to know that they have students who lag due to loss of a parent in the last COVID wave. Do you have any ideas on how to cope with this type of circumstances?
I know that it is a really it's intense. And it's not an easy answer. But my personal view is that we have a duty of care as teachers. Our duty of care involves support. It involves developing a safe learning environment for our students. A safe learning environment means an emotionally safe environment. We need to talk to our students and make it clear that we are there for them. It's important that they stay connected with their learning, but their well-being is our priority. Our students' well-being is always our priority, because if their well-being is looked after, the learning will happen. And trust relationships with our students in the classrooms are number one. They need to trust us as carers. They need to trust us as people that will look after their needs, and that will be a voice for them if they do not have a voice. But we can only do that if we are connected and aware, and we closely observe and make a neat analysis. What exactly does this student need from me?
As you say, I think education can be a tool, or can be crucial to provide a safe space for students, and especially as the questions was raised in circumstances like COVID, it can be like a shelter for so many children. We have a more theoretical question. So do you consider Howard Gardner's 5 Minds and Edgar Morin's 7 Complex Lessons as a framework for education for the future?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's a straightforward answer. Yes, definitely. But again, I will context consciousness. How the theory will look in my context might be slightly different of how it will look in your context, or how you will apply it in your context. So context consciousness is really important.
And we have a third question. How can we make teaching a joy? Is freedom of thought and freedom to apply methods important?
Sorry, Celia, can you just repeat the question? I couldn't hear you.
I will break it down in 2 questions. The first one is, how can we make teaching a joy? So how can teaching be enjoyable?
Okay, if we, that's a difficult one. If we as teachers enjoy what we do, our students will enjoy what we do. So I think it comes back to, and it sounds, I do not want it to sound, it's a quick fix. It's not, but it's, again, we need to know our students. We need to know what will trigger their interest. We need to know what will engage them. How will I grab their attention? So to do that, I need, again, the Canis model, connectedness. You as a teacher need to be connected. You can't hang around in the classroom. You need to be there. You need to have a presence. You need to observe your students. What are their needs? And then this is the student evidence and data that I spoke about. If you gather this evidence and data in an ongoing way, you know, Sun Youth will like to know more about Australia. Use it in your planning. Tell a story about Australia. Just grab them. And once you have them, you can do with them whatever you want, because students are eager to learn. It's just, just need to get it right sometimes. And I know when we have 40 students in our classrooms, not always easy. It's not easy, but it's challenging. And I think that is why teaching is a satisfying career. So how do I make teaching enjoyable? We have to keep our passion, and we need to observe our students. We need to know our students. We need to know how they learn, and we need to make the link. They can't make the link. We have to make the link.
Thank you. That was a very insightful answer from your side. We actually have another question that is very relevant considering the times, especially in higher education. I'm sure you've heard about the debates about freedom of speech. So one of our participants, she wants to know is freedom of thought and freedom to apply methods actually important to provide quality education?
My personal view is, and I'm a constructivist, so that's how it links to my theory. But I think it's really, really important that we keep our uniqueness as teachers. I have a unique way in how I teach, but I also know that my uniqueness will also always have to fit in the larger policy, the micro education policies of the school. So I need to stay accountable, but within my space, I think I need to be passionate, and to keep my passion, I need to be the teacher who I am. I need to follow my philosophy, my beliefs, and stay unique. And that will make me an interesting teacher for my students, because I will be different. So I think that would be my answer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think, as you said, you could agree there are certain boundaries, no? Like you can be free, but there is certain, it shouldn't be called boundaries. It can be also like values, or you should be held accountable. But
absolutely.
Thank you for your answer. Again, we have Ben Fenton Smith listening to us from Brisbane, Australia. He has a very interesting question for you. So who is the best educational leader you have encountered, and why?
The best educational leader I encountered was a leader that I started my teaching with in Johannesburg. And why I would identify him as the best leader that I encountered is that just one basic strategy. He came to my classroom as a beginning teacher. Well, I'm as a beginning teacher. He was an experienced leader. Came to my classroom every morning asking me, "Are you okay? How was yesterday? Did you have any challenges? Did you experience any challenges yesterday? How are you going with your planning?" Because it's as beginning teachers, we are struggling to plan and to stay on track with our planning because it's overwhelming. I think his engagement and connectedness with me provided me with a safe environment in which I was able to take risks. And that's why I would say that that's just, he was the best. And I can assure you that I encountered different leadership styles and different leadership theories during my career. And the engagement, the human value that he gave me made a difference.
It's amazing to see how impactful can a teacher be in the life of someone. We are gonna finalize with a couple of questions related with this online world we're living in now since the past year that has revolutionized in a way also the education system. So Rama Devi has a question. How would we imply this in-depth of assessment cycle you have mentioned when the learning is online and when the mode of teaching has taken a leap from on-site to online in the present scenario?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and I think I will come back to the context consciousness because there's not a clear-cut answer. It will depend on your students, the age of your students. It will depend on the subject. But I fully understand the complexity around assessment in the online space, because one of my pre-service teachers had a situation where she had to assess students in this online space. And parents contacted her and asked her about fairness and the validity of the assessment, because you never know if it's the student's work or the parents' work. So it becomes a very complex situation. But I would suggest that assessment should be face-to-face. Maybe if you want to make sure that it is valid, it's not a task that a parent has done for this student. You need to have oral assessments or think about oral assessments. But again, it's very difficult to give a clear-cut answer because it depends on the context and the age of the students. But it might be the best way to go is to do oral assessments.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a very good point that we might have not even think about, that we lose so many senses by being in this online world, and this affects education in so many ways. I think that's it for our Q&A session. This has been very interesting for all of us. All of us that work with education, might be directly or indirectly. Personally, as belonging to Chitkara University, being project managers at EduReform, it's so good to see the impact of quality education and the holistic approach you've taught us today, and how we have an important task in our societies. No? Education is everywhere, goes way beyond than the classroom. So this was a motivation for us to continue doing what we are currently doing, and we really learned a lot from you today.
It's my pleasure, and you are always welcome. Thank you.
So
now I would like to request Dr. Sangeeta Pant to say a word of thanks to Professor Anna.
Dr. Pant, you are muted.
Okay. On behalf of Chitkara University, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Professor Anna for enlightening us on handy tools for impactful teaching. It is a well-known fact that quality and affordable education for all is needed for nations to prosper. Therefore, teachers to play an important role in classroom to sow the seed of learning and nurturing young minds. Once again, thanks a lot for pearls of wisdom and sparing your valuable time. Thank you, Professor Anna. Once again, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. So I'm going to greet. Is that?
Thank you, Professor Anna. It was lovely. It was a wonderful
Okay.
session. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I hope to see you soon.
Yes, we would love to hear from you